Everyone is welcome here, it's time to make new friends. Aquavide Uskava, fill your Glencairn. Share a dram with the spirit of Edmonton.
Slancha. And good evening, whiskey brothers, sisters, and friends, and welcome to episode 84 of the Canadian Whisky Journey's Whiskey Review. I'm Dolph. I'm the creator of the Canadian Whisky Journey, the spirit of Edmonton on social media, and I'll be your host tonight. And tonight is our second installment of the 2024 Banff Whiskey Experience. Here, we'll get the little glass up there and see a little bit. Banff Whiskey Experience 2024 review. We started with Burwood Distillery last week, and this week we're with Wildlife Distillery with co-founder and distiller and all-around great guy, Matt Widmer. And welcome, Matt. How you doing tonight?
Cheers. I'm doing well. Thanks for
and
having
what's
me.
in your glass tonight, kind sir?
I've got our 5-year-old Wildlife single malt.
Nice.
So,
I've got in here, I've got your wheated whiskey in that one. And right there, oh, you can see it. That's your rye. So batch one of both of them.
Nice.
I was going to ask, batch 2 out? Of either of them? I don't.
Of which one? Sorry.
Of the rye.
Yes. Batch 2. We've got 3 batches of wheat out now.
Okay.
No, I think the rye batch 2 is coming this probably February. Should know that off the top of my head, but there's been a bunch of releases recently. So we have there's 4 different products out now, but the rye batch 2 is still in the works.
All right. Cheers, Steven. And what are we waiting for the second batch of rye? Something else to develop in the barrel before you put it out?
Yeah, I mean we're managing inventory, managing kind of age statements, and just checking where the casks are at, and also not trying to, release a bunch of things in a short amount of time. So sort of spreading our releases out throughout the year.
Like quarterly is what you do? Kind of?
Roughly, yeah. Like this past year, we had the 5-year single malt came out last December, and then we put out the peated in, I think it was February.
And I loved it, and it's done. We were talking about this off air, and it's done.
It was a small release.
Grab it, but I don't think so.
Yeah, that one we didn't. It was only 300 bottles, so it was small, and we didn't have any wholesale distribution. It didn't go to any stores, so it was just available online and in the tasting room. But I think as of last week, it's now gone, unfortunately. But there'll be more coming down the line. We've got more barrels. It's just a matter of getting some ready for harvest and proofing and finishing.
Well, I'm there for you. I loved it, and my wife did too. And I tried to save some. And she said she didn't do this, but I said I was trying to save some for when I was doing this with you this fall, and she just wouldn't listen. She just took it. Anyways, just giving me the stink eye in the background. It's okay. That's all right. It was good, and it's meant to be enjoyed, right? So let's just do a quick little couple pictures here so we see the outside. So let's see the mountains in beautiful Canmore, Alberta, and right there. And I don't know if I've ever seen the tables out front. So I don't know what this was a post of, but I took this off of Facebook, and I'm guessing it was maybe your mom.
In the summer, we do a patio.
Okay.
So we're in a condo building. This is the original tasting room location where we started with tasting room in the front, 900 square feet of distillery in the back. And essentially in the summer months, we don't have a permanent patio, but between kind of May and September, we're permitted to put out some tables and chairs in the evenings and weekends. So that's our kind of temporary patio situation.
That was this one, right?
This is the new distillery. That is the tasting room.
Yeah, sorry. That's the one there.
That's
not
an early
distillery, which is, I'm going to say 3 blocks away. Is it 3 blocks?
Yeah, something like that.
We drove there, and we should have walked, but we drove there, so I'm going to say 3 blocks away when we did it. And what else do we have? Yeah, I'm just going to show a couple pictures and just get people kind of at the bar. And this was...
Yeah, so that's the same space as the last shot.
just
a different angle.
view. Yeah.
And that's more recent, where we've turned the back, which previously was the distillery, into cocktail seating. So there's more. It's kind of a private event space. It's a funky cocktail spot, but we still have some of the original equipment back there. Our pot's still back there, and then we have our pictures that are still.
Well, what we're trying to do now, and so we're getting ready again. I keep trying to put this up. I should probably have one of these. So the Banff Whiskey Experience coming up 2 months away, and we're just trying to get everybody that's in the masterclass that will be running a quick view of the different distilleries, kind of the background, who's who, and kind of the history of who they are. So I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to get into this, but it's you've answered these before. We've talked about this, but I'll try to throw in some different questions for you, like this. What's the very first thing that you ever distilled? And I'm guessing it wasn't at that distillery. So can you think of the first thing you ever distilled?
Yeah, it would have been Keith and I built a little home still out of 40-liter hot water tank. Found a still design in a book that we got a friend who knew how to weld, and he fabricated us a little column with a little T valve and a condenser and collection tube. And we brewed a beer in the mash tun at it's not the mash tun. It was like a kettle that they used to make soups at a restaurant.
All right.
At my dad's old restaurant in Banff. And then we fermented that, and then we would have distilled. It was some kind of bourbon mash bill. It was like corn, malted barley, and a bit of rye, I think.
Oh, you did corn. Okay.
Yeah.
You're starting. Why not do it? And how do you get the recipe? How do you get your mash bill? Did you see that online?
It was out of the book. Yeah, we were reading distilling books, or maybe I was reading distilling books at the time, and it was like, here's a homemade whiskey recipe. We're like, okay, let's try this.
Let's do it. And the hardest part, do you remember? I'll tell you the hardest part for me for the home distilling, but for you, I just want to find out.
Cleaning out our still.
What's that?
Cleaning out the still afterwards.
Okay. You didn't use too much rye, did you?
No, but it was just like these little immersion elements, and they were scorching, and it was like the output drain was tiny, and it was plugging up, and we had to disconnect it and dump it upside down to actually empty the thing.
So how many times did you do it after that then?
A whole bunch. Yeah.
A whole bunch. All right. You just got used to it. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, we made stuff. None of it ever was that amazing, but we learned a lot about the principles and how to run a still and heating and cooling and, making some cuts and just trying different.
And that's what it's about. That's what makes it fun. And Stephen on here, Stephen, he's a home distiller with me too. So we've never done it together, but it's for me, it was the temperature and trying to regulate the temperature with the water flow at the same time. And when you're not dealing with something that's really touchy, well, it's something that is touchy where you can't control it so much. It's kind of difficult for me. And then the cuts, knowing when to do the cuts. But did you use the same mash bill a couple of times so you got used to the same thing, or you try a whole bunch of different stuff?
Yeah, we kept running the same mash bill because we had no alcohol, so there was no to actually get enough low wines to run a spirit run in our little still. I think we had to do 3 or 4 of the same fermentations to get enough booze to make something.
Nice.
So you kind of committed at that point.
All right, so that was the first. What's the first distillate you did on your commercial still?
Yeah, that would have been about 70% wheat. I think we tried a few in the beginning. I mean, in the beginning, we were dialing in. We did a few different mash bills with a few different yeast strains to try and figure out. We knew we wanted to use wheat. We had a good source of wheat from a local farmer just outside of Calgary. So we kind of had that figured out, but the mash tun we went with initially had no heating capacity, so we're using an on-demand hot water heater. So we needed some malted barley to be able to convert a lot of that starch, and it was raw wheat that we're using. So yeah, It was probably around 70% wheat, 30% malted barley, 2,000 liters. And then in the beginning, we were fermenting in IBC totes, open top.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a pot still, a 500-liter pot still, and then a 500-liter column still that we would run. So we had to strip 4 times to get one spirit run. Yeah, it's funny thinking back on what we did in the beginning. It wasn't that long ago.
Looking back at what you did for that first run and how well you had to strip it 4 times. So as you're doing that first one, are you thinking, we're going to get this? We're going to get this. Relax. Don't worry. It's going to happen.
That was more the spirit. The stripping we understood. That was easy. The stripping still worked well. It was once we started running the column. Yeah, I don't want to talk poorly about other brands, but the type of still that we ran was very finicky for like control of flow, and it was a lot of like digital automation, which didn't really work that well for us. So yeah, we had to figure out how to make the cuts through sensory. It was kind of taste, smell, flow.
So no digital automation for you.
I was like, what's that?
No digital automation for you then. It's all you. It's all
it didn't work. It wasn't working as advertised. But that was fine. It meant we just had to pay attention. But it was like the first heads cut and the first tails cut, and then like the culmination of that batch, and then diluting that, improving it, and then tasting that. That was the big like aha moment of like, okay, it's good. It tastes good.
Right. We're good. Yeah. We can keep doing
that was cool, because up until that point we hadn't made a whole lot on our home still that we were that stoked about. So
and did you find that on your home still you got the same product just about every time? It seems like just about everything I try to put on it, it tastes just about the same, even if it's full barley or I'm doing barley, and even if it's a sugar water, there's certain elements, just a certain still tastes like a certain still to me. So I'm wondering if yours was like that no matter what you did, or you made it distinct.
No, I would agree with that. I think there's just not enough rectification. Like a lot of the like subtleties between ingredients happen when you're able to purify a little more.
Yep.
I think a lot of the homebrewed stuff, you just kind of can't really clean it up to a point where those nuances come through.
Or using the enzymes to make a difference somehow in what you're doing. It's just
maybe
nothing.
Right? Yeah, ours tasted pretty similar. So we were convinced that we could make something better on commercial equipment. I don't know why, but it turned out that it can work.
You did. Well, I'm convinced I could, and I've had a hand at it. Some people, I'm at someone's distillery using their still with them there, but I'm still doing it with them, and it's still fun. Okay,
nice.
So I'll call myself not quite a distiller, an almost distiller. No, I'm a distiller assistant is what I would be. I think I'm good at opening bags and dumping the malt.
That's important.
As I'm drinking their whiskey. That's good.
You figured out which not to cut in the malt bags.
Yes, and that didn't take very long, because you screw that up once or twice and then it just goes, and people laugh at you enough that you just kind of learn, right? Yeah. So, and your choice of stills. Let's go back to the beginning. You decide, and let's talk about your partner and you. So your dad was in the restaurant business. Your partner was in the oil and gas business.
Yeah. So Keith.
And how did you guys meet? Did you grow up together? Did you know each other in Canmore, Banff?
Yeah, he grew up in Canmore. I grew up in Banff, and we knew each other kind of through the cross-country ski scene, the sports scene.
Okay.
It's kind of a long story, but his sister dated my brother when we were younger in high school, in like early 20s. And then we ended up living together at university. We went to school on Vancouver Island, and Keith, his name's Keith Robinson. He was out there going to business school, and I was out there doing kinesiology at UVic. And became buddies, and then just traveled a bunch together, and we were both back in the Valley in the kind of 2010 to 2015 era. And then I had been to Chicago in 2011 to the Koval Distillery in Ravenswood there in Chicago. Took a distilling course with them, which kind of just piqued. I was kind of interested, and then that course was like, this is pretty neat, and why isn't there anything like this in Alberta? And then Keith was just a friend that I thought we had hung out and traveled enough together, and I just knew he had a lot of skills that would transfer really well, and was just a solid person and a good buddy that we kind of shook hands in 2014 in the summer, and then started working on it after that. Yeah.
And the decision to go to Canmore, stay in Banff, stay in Canmore, it was always going to be like that? You didn't think you're going to Calgary or something like that? Bigger
At
audience?
first we were looking in Banff, to be honest, because before there was Keith, I was looking in Banff. And then the park, or the, not Parks Canada, but the town of Banff kind of told me that you couldn't do it in Banff. And then a year later, park opened. So
yeah, it's like, okay. You're
but
talking to the wrong person, or
I guess. But then Canmore just kind of was a great option, and Keith was there, and we found a space, and it was less restrictive with not being in the park and blah blah blah. So yeah, it's been awesome, and if I could do it over, I think I'd still do it in Canmore. It's just there's a little bit more, real estate. There's more options. There's a little more local population, and it's a good town.
Talk about the startup and how easy or hard it was to actually get everything into the same establishment and getting the okay to finally open the distillery.
Yeah, it's a process. I mean, I think the process of starting a craft distillery has evolved over the last decade. It's what we were able to do then is different from what you can do now, which will probably be different from what someone in 5 years has to do. But at the time, I think it was 7 different licenses that we had to have, whether it was federal, provincial, local. There's health and safety, there's fire, there's town of Canmore. So yeah, it was just kind of like one foot in front of the next. Okay, we can't do this until we have this. So we leased the space, and then we were renovating kind of while we were permitting. It was, the existing location was like a fitness gym, which had none of the systems,
the infrastructure you needed.
Yeah. So we, upgraded power, upgraded ventilation, added drainage, got a boiler installed, and then started getting the stills installed, built the tasting bar, dishwasher, sink, fridges. There was nothing really. So it was a small space, but it was still a pretty decent project to get it up and running. And then, it was kind of just over a year and a bit from the moment we signed the lease by the time we actually opened. And then it was
so compare that to opening the second site.
Yeah. So then I guess for people who don't know our story as much, after kind of 5-ish years in the current spot, we were getting to a point where it was pretty small. We were limited with capacity. It was turning into a game of Tetris with pallets in, pallets out, grain in, grain out, product in, glass out, blah, blah.
But the good people at Canmore loved you so much, and that's why you grew so quickly.
I don't know.
It was fantastic. It's a good reason. You moved because...
Yeah, we needed more space. We needed more capacity. And a building came up around the corner, like Dolph said, kind of 3 blocks away. And so that process, that was a little more involved because it was just more money. So it involved a bit of fundraising. Mm-hmm. We ended up buying the building, sourcing equipment. It was a lot. We wanted to make sure the design was more thorough. There's a lot of efficiencies we've gained, whether it's heating and cooling, even cooking and efficiencies in our fermenters. We can make gin and vodka at the same time. There's a lot of things that are just better over there.
Yeah.
It's just kind of wisdom. You don't know until you know it, from a process design standpoint. So yeah, it was probably around the same. It probably took longer for the expansion.
Really? Okay.
Because it was there was the whole preamble with some investors, and we couldn't really go forward until we had that sorted, because that was kind of 6 months. And then the build out reno was probably a year. But then once everything was like a lot smoother, but it was just like engineered, the design. There was some pretty major leaseholds that we still had to deal with because the fire code was a little more stringent now from when we first started. Okay. We actually wouldn't, today you couldn't get permitted what we did in 2017 from a fire code perspective.
Distilling and serving in the same general area, right?
Yeah, mostly just like the separation. Okay. There's not explosion-proof fixtures back there. It's not sprinklered, and I think it's only 2-hour rated firewall.
Okay.
Now
it's still beautiful in there. You want to go sit down. It's a good place.
No, you would never think about that, but it's just not. It's kind of evolved, so we had to do a bit more with the new spot. Anyway,
perfect. So you meet your partner. You come back to Canmore. You both meet your respective spouses. They're not related somehow, too, are they? It's not. You didn't meet sisters and kind of.
Yeah, they are. Well, they are. One isn't. Keith is married to my sister.
Okay, so yeah, the whole family, everyone together, everyone working together. I love it. And
sounds pretty red, small town, but we're normal. Trust me.
No, we're not saying anything but that. I'm just trying to get to the family unit, and it's how it feels when you're there. And when the day I showed up to see in the summer, you go upstairs, and it feels very homey. It feels, I don't know if you're seen The Hobbit or something. It made me feel very at ease when I was downstairs. It was like my own happy Hobbit hole in there, surrounded by whiskey and the peat, which made me really happy. Now let's expand it a little bit. As you're developing the first time or the second time, you have help from other people that you've met. So how much did your father maybe help out in any type of design process, or his thought, or where to start and where to go? Did he have something, or was it maybe other friends that helped out, someone like Steve Lee that we know at Douglas?
In terms of product?
In terms of product, or just starting out in the concept of how you're going to continue and grow?
No, that was just Keith and I. We definitely spoke to like people for advice. There's a couple local business people that we would go for coffee with and just kind of bounce ideas off. But once we sort of had name and the location, what we did in terms of branding, products, direction, strategy, in one sense, we were kind of like this in a bubble, just like doing our thing. But in another sense, it allowed us to make very natural, organic, like intuitive decisions on what we wanted the brand to be.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know. We wanted to understand it from top to bottom. So we didn't venture out and ask too many people what they thought or what to do. Okay. So, I mean, we probably could have done things better, but doing it our way allowed us to just really own and adopt and, be the brand is us, which is somewhat sort of weird and limiting, but it's also made us very comfortable with decisions we're making about the brand or the products, because we can own it and stand by it. And if people challenge or, criticize things, it's easy to defend because we've thought a lot about it. Everything we've done has just kind of been us we're making a decision.
All right, so let's go to the branding. And so we'll make this a little bit larger so people can see, and they can see yours as well. I just like the green here. So what do you have a picture of? So this is the Three Sisters.
That's Castle Mountain.
Oh, see, I'm wrong. Good thing I had. So and choice of these, why?
The same logo.
And the big black as well. Like everything looks really nice and polished. So let's just go over the picture that you've got a little bit.
Yeah, so it's our logo essentially with a little more detail. Being in Canmore, the mountains are everywhere. The mountains are most people's logos. The Three Sisters are on everything. We wanted to pick a peak that was not overdone, but still iconic enough that people recognize. Okay. So this mountain, when you're driving to Lake Louise on your right at Castle Junction, is a nice long wall. Okay. Then the logo kind of went. We used to have animals like a wolf and a bison and a lynx on some of our products. So wildlife can be 2 words. Wildlife was also like the play on words to integrate kind of the regional animals into the theme. So we kind of cut the animals in half for the faces because our industry, there's a lot of intellectual property and BS you got to deal with big brands searching out every other mark.
I believe it.
So we went with the half face just to kind of mitigate that. So the dark bottles are for whiskey, the black with the half face ram, and then our vodka gins are white with a half face bison. I think I got one up here I could show you.
Sure thing.
Just for example.
There we go.
So that's the half face bison. That's a botanical gin from this summer. So just for the comparison.
Now tell me something that you might not have anymore that you started out with. So when you were making them initially, because you bring some product in, you drop some product. Give me an example of something that you had that just didn't fit what you wanted to do, and you kind of dropped it.
We haven't discontinued any product yet. This one we do differently every year, the Alberta Botanical Gin.
Okay.
So this one's like a regional gin that we use wild forage botanicals for, and every summer it changes. So you could only get that one once, and if you liked it last year, it's going to be different next year.
Okay. I might be thinking of RTDs because I don't think you ever did them, and I thought I was trying to get to that, like the decision not to do RTDs in your case.
Well, we do them now. We didn't do them at first, but they've been now. We're coming up on our 3rd summer with them. So we have 4 alcoholic ones and then 1 non-alc.
Okay.
I could show you what I have a couple in the fridge if you want to see the branding.
How's the non-alcoholic one sell?
Awesome.
I'm guessing. Yeah, it's just
actually turning into one of our more popular ones, which is surprising. It's a raspberry mojito. That one.
Okay. Nice. Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. And not too sweet. I always ask that because I'm not a sweet guy. So.
No, we kind of went. We found the vodka or there's vodka sodas or there's like super sweet cocktails.
Yeah.
We tried to land in the middle to be like interesting and flavorful, but not just totally dry and not super sweet. So that was kind of the approach with those.
All right. I want to get back to the whiskey, but I want one question before we got there because I still want the past as well. I'm going to try to bring that in. So what was your biggest initial hurdle within the industry starting? Whatever you want to focus on. And what's a continual hurdle that you're always fighting with, maybe? That would be nice to actually fix, or if someone fixed it.
Yeah. The initial hurdle, it's just a lot of licensing and regulatory authorities you have to kind of appease, and they don't talk to each other really.
Okay.
It's like, we'll do this, but you need to get that from them, and we don't talk to them, so you got to figure it out with them. So I mean, there's red tape with licensing, fire code, building code. There's just a lot of kind of processes you got to get through to get open. And then, you know this from talking to lots of distillers, but the federal tax is currently on like an annual escalator.
Yep.
So it's supposed to go up with inflation every year. But just as an example, we've been in business for not even 8 years. And at the federal level, we already pay 30% more tax than we paid when we started, which amounts to, thousands of dollars every month, which is like the difference of an employee or getting something useful. And then provincially too, there's a lot of work being done by the Alberta Craft Distilling Association. So we're hopeful that the AGLC is listening and maybe the federal government's listening. Not sure which one will happen first, but hopefully there'll be a bit of a tax break because we still pay quite a bit per bottle, which affects the prices on shelves, and it all gets passed down to the consumer, which is too bad, but it's just the way that it is in Alberta.
And I don't see it changing anytime soon, but the voices are getting deeper and a little bit louder and kind of in unison a little bit more now, right? So, and you want that. So the Craft Distillers Association, we talked about that this summer, and I was eager to see the movement on their side. And It is. I've talked about it a bit, and it's happening. So I'm
Yeah.
happy. I'm happy with what I'm seeing moving.
There's a lot of talk that it's going to happen. So
yeah,
but talk is
fingers
talk,
crossed, right? I hope for you, buddy. It'd be good. Now, before we get back to the other whiskeys, and we're going to start talking about the wood and your choices of the different woods for the different whiskeys. Let's talk about what's in your glass, because you have the single malt, and I've got the weeded whiskey, which again, batch 1, and it's fantastic. I loved it then, but since you're on batch 3, I'm wondering, is the weeded whiskey your favorite, or just the best seller?
My favorite? It was just kind of the timing.
Okay.
We wanted to wait for our first single malt for 5-year-old.
Yep.
And then we had wheat that was mature sooner. We just felt was ready. So we weren't really committed to this is going to be our first whiskey. We kind of let the whiskey do the talking and say we were just trying them. And then as we approached 3-4 years, the wheat was the one that was the most mature. So we went with it. Yeah. So that one's, it's 61% wheat, 26 barley, 13 rye.
Nice.
Primarily new oak, and 45.3 on the ABV.
Excellent. And your single malt, let's talk about that. And you can talk about the notes as well. I was going to talk about mine, but I had COVID last week. And like I said, when I was talking about the rye, I think I'm messed up. Everything's real. Well, yours was all light and fruity as well, but I can't get rid of the apricot or peach. It's just in everything in mine. So what do you got? Oh, and my son said plum. So maybe, he had COVID with me, so maybe it's just not the sell.
On the wheat, the wheat I get maybe candied orange if I had to go fruit. I get like caramel, brown sugar, toasted malt, a bit of like shreddy, like cereal notes. There's a beautiful sweetness, like nice tannin in that one. And it's probably of the three the softest. It kind of mellows and softens out in a really nice way on the finish. 45.3, not aggressive on the ABV, but also not 40. So it's in a nice, approachable place. That the point with that one is kind of a whiskey for everyone to enjoy.
Cheers, Ben. And it's very approachable. And I've given this to friends just getting into Canadian whiskey. Now, Canadian whiskey for me is light anyways, but this had a little bit more to it. I mean, it wasn't just the corn.
Canadian whiskey, I'd say it's not light at all. But if you compare it to the big bad world of cask strength, barrel proof, this and that, it's light.
Which I like.
Yeah. But we're happy with that one. It just won a gold at the Canadian Whisky Awards, and then it also won a judges selection at the Alberta Beverage Awards this year.
Nice.
Which is sweet.
Okay, so it's still a breakfast whiskey for me. That's my breakfast right there. And we would go to the single malt, then the rye. And that's how I would have it if I had all three. So tell me about the single malt.
Yeah, the single malt's 100% Alberta malted barley. We're getting that from RAR, just outside of Red Deer in Alex. It's 47.5, and it's primarily ex-bourbon, so 200 liter, 53 gallons on the casks. But with that one, we did include one cask of new oak. So there's a touch of wood on it, maybe compared to a really light Highland style single malt. You might get a touch more wood. But we just liked it, and it kind of brought a touch more sweetness and wood into the equation when we were blending it up. That one we were getting like obviously sweet barley, marzipan, toasted almonds, apricot, nice kind of light fruity, and then caramel again, barley, kind of grainy. It's oilier. The single malt everything's pot distilled, but the single malt's intentionally, we're trying to retain even more oil than the others in style. I also think that the wood, like new oak, can really mask a lot of nice oils in single malt or in other styles of whiskey too. So you could have a real round, oily spirit, and a new oak barrel just kind of knocks that back versus using ex-bourbon. Ex-bourbon allows that to kind of show and stand up as it matures, and those oils and often the tail components develop into really wonderful flavors. But if you have too much oak, you kind of lose that. So,
and you get lost in it, and people, some love it, some like sucking on the wood, and some like, depends on the mood, actually, to tell you the truth, because sometimes I do want more of a shot. I love my octaves, the independent bottlers in the octaves. Sometimes I just want that, the heavy. But yours is not. And you said 5 years or 5.5?
The single malt's 5. Yeah,
it's 5, not 5. Okay,
minimum 5. We kind of just use minimum to give ourselves a little bit of freedom if there's a barrel that's slightly older.
And we're going to say non-chill filtered, no added coloring, all the stuff we want.
Yeah, we kind of missed that. We forgot to put that on the label. We were just like, well, obviously it's not. And then someone's like, you should put that on the label because people don't just assume that. And we were like, that's a good point.
I do. I really, really, really do. And when I'm looking for a whiskey, and I tell people this a lot now, and I'm a little bit annoying with it, and it's like, that's what you want. You want from your whiskey, you want the non-chill filtered because you want the oily, you want the body, and I think there is more with it. I keep arguing with Dr. Don from Wiser's, and he keeps telling me if we do what test does he keep telling me? Well, it's blind, and I keep telling him I can taste it blind, and he doesn't believe me. But
really?
I'm positive that I can tell if something's chill filtered and non-chill filtered. And he gave me 2 bottles, one chill filtered, one non-chill filtered of the same juice. And I thought it was similar, but I think he was just messing with me. Anyways, he'll be in Banff, and maybe we could talk about it if you're there. Yeah. We'll have a nice discussion about it. But non-chill filtered, the no coloring, because there's no use for it, no reason for it. It's not going to convince me because this is lighter that it's any less important than the rye that's a little bit darker. It's just not there. And cast strength is my next favorite, but if it's not going to be cast strength, have it around 46 or just a little bit above. It makes me happy. This one just a little bit below, but same thing. This does not cloud though.
No.
Does it? So it's not 46, but it still doesn't cloud.
Yeah, that would have to do with just residual oil, which I guess we don't have as much of, but yeah. We didn't filter it at all. It's just I'm kind of happy it doesn't, because it just raises eyebrows when it does, even though it's just delicious oil and flavor that is perfectly fine for you. But yeah, we never had a problem with that with our whiskeys.
Nice. And you're in a cold climate. People bring it up to the ski hill. It would have the chance to get cloudy in those circumstances.
We've had that happen with our gin, but not with the whiskey.
Okay. Good. And Let's talk about wood, where you wanted to go at the beginning with your whiskey. So the wheated, the rye, the single malts, where you wanted to go, and what you did with the wood to make it happen for you.
Yeah. Where did we want to go? We wanted to make good whiskey. That was like the obvious choice.
But what was good whiskey for both of you, though? Because did you like the lighter style, or were you going for something that now I think your taste in whiskey is different from what it was before when you started?
I mean, when we originally set up the distillery, single malt was sort of the vision. We went to Scotland and toured all over the whiskey trail and all over, kind of did a full lap of the country, and finished on Isla, and got to meet Jim McEwen at Bricklady, who toured us around, and just left us with this amazing, experience of a iconic place with iconic whiskey. So we were sipping on Octomore that he had given us a sample out of the barrel of, and we're like, we want to make this, but it's also not really, there's not a huge market for that in Canada.
Well, your 300 of the peat went, and I'll be buying more of it. So
I mean, it's there, but it's not for everyone. So in the meantime, it was kind of like, well, it's always been about place. Like, we're in Alberta. What do we have here that grows here? Barley. It's wheat, it's rye, it's barley. So we kind of chose those 3 grains as sort of the base grains for the distilling program. And then, it was kind of like, well, single malt's going to have its place with, in terms of wood. We definitely went like, I don't want to say safe, but we didn't just pick some random experimental angle and run for years because we were new in the industry, and we wanted to do our homework and honor tradition and honor, like, these companies have done this for decades because it works. And you can taste it in their products. So we kind of went safe with the program. Traditional aging, 200-liter casks or 53 gallons, primarily ex-bourbon with the single malts. And then with the wheat and the rye, it's primarily new oak. Again, 53s. We get our wood from Kelvin. This is the cooperage out of Kentucky.
Nice.
You can see that?
I see it. That's good.
They make an awesome barrel. So we went down to Kentucky, visited probably 5 different cooperages, tried whiskeys from them, met the people. Every time we made a decision over the last 7 years, it was like, let's go to the source. Go to the source. You want to make whiskey? You go to Scotland. Sorry, Irish people. You want to use a barrel? Go to Kentucky, visit a cooperage. You want to make rye? Let's go to New York and see how they make rye.
All right.
So it's always kind of been that approach to everything we've done, which just allows us, to gain a bit of worldly experience and see how others in the industry do it, and take little nuggets that we can implement back to our process and our place in Canmore, and then, put the Rocky Mountain water, Alberta prairie grain, and the lifestyle kind of that goes into everything around the products. But that was kind of a roundabout answer, but
it's good. But I'm gonna piggyback on it. How is your wood development? How has it changed over time? Because when you're first starting, you're putting it in wood, but then as you have more experience, you're able to decide, I'm going to put it in once used, twice used, something that's been used many, many times and fresh. When did that change for you? Because there's a certain point in time where it does. And how did it change for you?
I mean, we're doing things today that we did in the beginning and with some of our barrel program. But what we have is ex-wildlife casks.
Okay.
So we have all the casks from all of our various releases that might have been first fill, might have been second fill. So they've either been refilled with a similar whiskey, or we might put a wheat into a rye barrel or a single malt into a wheat barrel.
Okay.
So there's our own recycling of casks, which is cool. But that's only started to happen in the last couple of years. So we'll see how those develop and whether or not they kind of mirror some of the notes we were getting from ex-bourbon, or how those are different. But I think we did a good job of like picking ratios of barrels within our program. There's kind of 4 pillars. There's single malt, wheat, there's rye, and there's peat. And within those pillars, we've kind of split it up 75-25 new oak and ex-bourbon, and then flip that for the single malts. So I think we've got a really nice palette of whiskey colors that will allow us to blend into cool expressions. And now it's like the warehouse is more mature, or we've kind of got a mature warehouse now that we can start finishing with. So now we didn't do a whole bunch with finishing because we just wanted to prove to ourselves and our consumers that we could make whiskey without covering it up with whatever finishing this or flavored that. It was like, we just want to make good quality whiskey. And that kind of has given us permission to, now we can do something with sherry, do something with mezcal, do something with rum. Like now we can kind of have fun with our liquid. But before we could do this stuff, we didn't really feel like we had the right to do something different. So,
well, you just want to get your feet under you, right?
Totally.
You just want to understand what you're doing and be good at what you're doing. And then when you have that confidence, that's when you branch out and you do new stuff. I'm looking forward to the mezcal. I want to hear. What do you have in the mezcal?
Nothing yet.
Okay.
That's a good idea. But we do have, we've got some PX sherry. That's pretty good. So,
well,
might be something like that coming out.
Got good. And you do have something coming out in November. You don't have to tell us, but it will be at the Banff Whiskey Experience. Yeah.
Yep. We'll have
Now,
a
is
new whiskey
that
there.
what you're going to bring to our masterclass, or do you have something else possibly in mind?
So I'll bring something that's unreleased and
Okay.
interesting.
Excellent. The under the table dram afterward for people.
Yeah.
Nice. And now your barrel program.
Mhm.
How many barrels do you think you have right now?
A little over 300.
Okay. And how many would you taste, let's say in a month, just see where they are? Because there's some you're not even tasting, I'm assuming. You're just letting it go through the process for 2-3 years without maybe tasting it before. But at what point do you decide I'm going to actually take a little taste? If you see leaking or something, you do it. Or maybe, at 3 years I'm going in, or at 24 months I'm checking it every 2-3 months. I'm wondering how you decide.
I'd say we taste. In the beginning it was easier because there was less barrels.
Yeah.
But we tried to taste everything every 6 months in the beginning.
Okay.
Just to make sure things were kind of progressing as we were hoping.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely have the odd barrel that leaks and the losses are more than you would have expected, but in general the warehouse has some humidity control, temperature control, so I think we're getting relatively consistent aging.
Okay.
But at this point we have a software that tracks all the barrels ages, and essentially when we're getting ready, we'll kind of plan out our year of harvest.
Yeah.
And then when we're getting ready to harvest, we'll pull, say we need 8 casks, we'll pull samples from 20 to 30 and then try all those, kind of basically try and match the blend that we had prior, if it's going to be a wheat whiskey release or a rye whiskey release. And there'll always be a little bit of variation. Just it's 8 barrels, not 800 barrels, and there's it's a smaller pool of barrels that we're pulling from. But I wouldn't say we're tasting as often, but it's kind of a little bit more curated and planned and methodical. But yeah, Keith, I'm kind of a little more in sales and marketing now. Keith and the distilling team are more out at the warehouse and involved in that. So I think that's what his answer would be, but I'd have to ask him.
That's all right.
Yeah.
And you can bring him in Banff. It's not just you. It's a whole team can be up there in the front.
We'll have a crew.
Everyone.
Yeah.
And okay, I don't know how you're going to answer this. Actually, often I do, but for you, I don't. What's a quintessential Canadian whiskey for you? Like when someone says Canadian whiskey, what do you think? And this could be good or bad. And I know some people they hate Canadian whiskey, and there's a reason for it, and they explain it. But for you, when I say Canadian whiskey, what do you think of?
Yeah, I think of whiskey that I don't love. Okay. I never I guess when my whiskey development as a teenager, early 20s, I wasn't buying the nice stuff. No. It's Canadian Club and Crown Royal and Wiser's and R&R. That's the lineup.
So that's what you think of. And
those were whiskeys.
Do you still think people think mostly in those terms, or do you think it's changing a little bit because of craft? Or do you have to be in Alberta or BC?
I'd like to think it's changing, but I don't know. There's a lot of brands who are promoting and sharing and tasting, and like the stuff that's coming out today, I think Canadians can be proud of. It's like, this stuff is good, and it's evolving. And I think it's also challenging the big brands to be like, what are we doing here? Because Crown coming out with a single malt, that's interesting. That means they're thinking about it and they're aware of like, oh, maybe there's other categories that we're not servicing here.
And I like that. There's competition. There's people pushing the competition until, well, this happened in the 70s with beer. And then the poor little guy got squashed everywhere. Well, I shouldn't say that. A lot of them got bought out and they got a handsome reward for all their efforts. But Alberta whiskey, BC whiskey, both of them doing fantastic. Well, I'm going to say I'll throw the Yukon up there too. We're doing very, very, very well. and some great whiskeys to be proud of. But that comes up a lot because I talk to people online quite a bit, and when they hear Canadian whiskey, and then I do this channel, they're a little bit, they don't know what to think, and I want to change that perception. Always wanted to change that perception. You guys are a good reason and a good bottle to give to someone if you say, like, I don't like Canadian whiskey. Well, try this. What do you think? And you do it blind. And I do a lot of tastings, and when I do a lot of the Canadian whiskeys blind, people don't say it's Canadian whiskey. And I find that funny, and I find it sad. But I like what you guys are doing, and what I'm going to say, probably 7 different distilleries in Alberta are doing some phenomenal things. Phenomenal. And BC, same thing. My wife's trying to name them off the side. Well, we're not going to say them. We're not going to say. But
I'm just commented with a bunch of them. But yeah, no, I agree. It's a new industry. It's exciting. I think there needs to be some like collaboration amongst all of us who are making whiskey the right way and coming up with some sort of a denomination or a designation that, like, you know, stamps our certification of approval, whatever that term is, or
just like the VQA for wines,
spirits, or something. Because we have the grain, we have the water, we have everything right here at home that you need to produce a quality product. And for years, it's kind of just been produced for bottom of the shelf type liquid, and we can do better. Yeah,
we can, and we're in the right direction. And the older our whiskeys get, the more fantastic they're going to be too. And the more barrels that you have back there, the more you get to choose from and be really creative with it in the background. All right, I'm going to kind of wrap this up with 2 questions. Actually, no, one just a comment. Tell me about the support you have from your people at home. So the people in Canmore, how they supported you, because when I was there, you were setting up for, I can't remember which anniversary, but it was a party up front.
Yeah, it would have been our 7-year party.
7? Okay.
Yeah. The local community has been amazing. We are very lucky to be in the Bow Valley. There's a lot of hospitality and bars and restaurants and liquor stores that have all been very supportive. And yeah, without the local support, we wouldn't been able to expand our facility, to lay more barrels, to grow as a business. So yeah, super grateful for everybody in the Valley that's pushed our products and came to our parties and drank our stuff.
Nice. And you rely on the people, and they're there. They bought most of the 300 bottles of the peanuts that I wanted. So
need a bottle that's probably around town somewhere.
Yeah. And this, I'm guessing this is you too, right? Duty free, Calgary.
Yeah.
So, and what I mean by you is not you as in wildlife. I mean, like, this is your thing. This is a map.
That's that photo right there.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, that's the new display at the duty free store at Calgary.
All right. So you're getting across. You're all over the world. What are you most proud of as a business owner? And then I'm going to say, what are you most proud of as a distillery? So I'm going to do both. One, just basic business. Second one, distillery, and we're going to end on that.
Sure.
As I drink the last of my rye.
What am I most proud of as a business owner?
Yeah.
It's got to be being able to employ, 12 people who can live and work in the Bow Valley and make enough money to stay here and live here and work here, but also like enjoy this place from nothing, like just kind of creating something with Keith that is now a thing that people can adopt and live and work and be here, because it's not an easy place to make it go.
It's not a cheap place for people working there either. Okay. But good answer. And now as a distiller, within the world of liquor, what you've done.
I mean, if this as like a package from the bottle design to the label to the everything that's gone into it, and then the liquid inside, this is 10 years in the making. It's a 4-year-old whiskey, but it's more than that. And yeah, it turned out awesome. It's better than I would have expected for a 4-year-old. and to have it be our first peated release, it's freaking sweet, and we're stoked to be making good stuff. Yeah,
well, you are, and I'm really happy that you're with us in Banff in a couple months. Well, it's like a month and 2 weeks.
We'll look forward to it. End of November, right?
Yeah.
So
Should
cool.
be fun. All right. Any last comments on your side, kind sir? We're coming up on the hour mark, and we'll be wrapping up.
Yeah, Wildlife Distillery in Canmore. Our website's wildlifedistillery.ca. If you want to find us on socials, it's WLD Spirits on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, we do cocktails, we do tours, we do tastings in Canmore. So if anyone's ever down in our neck of the woods, feel free to give us a visit and come say hi.
Do the tour. It's worth it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, kind sir. Slide cheers to everybody, and have a fantastic night, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye now.